My name is Susan Arnold. I am the health coordinator with Early Head Start Boys Town, and I'm part of the parent orientation having to do with health. So, the topics that we're going to discuss today are car seat safety, pedestrian safety, choking prevention, home safety, keeping kids safe around medications, mental health, oral health, shaken baby syndrome, and sleep safety. The first thing that we're going to talk about is car seat safety. As you know, in the state of Louisiana and all of our states, children who are under the age of 5, but again, this depends upon size and weight, or height and weight, must be in a car seat of some sort. As your child gets older, they go to a booster seat. But the first thing that they start off with is the full car seat. The child always rides in the back of a seat and never in front of an airbag. Everyone in my car, and it should be in your car, buckles up for every ride using the right car seat, a booster seat, or a seat belt for each person's age and size. Every car seat has parts, labels, and instructions and should be followed for putting them in your car. However, if you're having a bit of a challenge, and sometimes that happens depending upon how complicated it can be, you can go to any fire station in the city. You can go to the state troopers headquarters right off of Veterans or off the I-10, and they will help you. And any police station will help you. They are more than happy to help you get your car seat installed correctly. And I'm going to stress this. Never, ever, ever leave your child in a car seat in your car, irregardless of what kind of weather it is. A good tip is if you're not used to taking your child to daycare or school or dropping them off, etc., my hint was always, if I had RJ, my son, I put my purse in the back seat. That way I knew that I would never get out of my car without getting my purse. And that was always a reminder. So do something. We've heard parents who will put a little string on their steering wheel if they get in the car and they have their child. But it is very important. Do not leave your child in their car seat alone in a car, irregardless of what the weather might be. Recently, actually last year, there was a change in Louisiana on the car seat safety law. And so, as you can tell by this little outline here, the slide that we have, it shows you of all of the things that how you can determine that your child can ride safely in a car seat when they need to go to a booster seat. So please, look at this. This is a really good rule to follow. Again, the law does now say that it is really weight and height that determines when you turn the child and how you progress from a car seat to a booster seat. And we have had another slide here that really gives you a little more detail on the Louisiana Child Passenger Safety Law. And I'm not going to read this to y'all. You can read it at your leisure. Again, we've given you another little slide that tells you about rear facing up to the age of 2, and then they can turn and face front at age 2. Again, please keep in mind that we have big 2-year-olds and we have little 5-year-olds. So this really is dependent upon their weight and height. Now we're going to move on to pedestrian safety. As we have moved into returning to school, some of you are dropping your children off at curbside or maybe even escorting them to the front door of the centers. It is very important that you observe pedestrian safety with your child and for yourself when you're dropping your child off, or even when you're out and about with your child. Always keep your child close to you. If they're still in a stroller, just to kind of help you in moving through traffic, etc., going to the mall, make sure that they are strapped in securely. and that you have your eye on them at all times. Please don't get on your phones. Talk with your child during this period of time. It's a good time to have conversation with them. You can always use your phone when you get home and they're in bed and they're asleep or they're being entertained by some other activity. A cardinal rule is that when you get to an intersection or a corner, make sure that you pull the stroller back beside you rather than it being in front of you. That way, if a car happens to jump the curb or the bus makes a sharp turn, which is something that can happen, or a big truck, that child is not in front of you and you're having to pull back or gets caught under the wheels. Now is very important in teaching your children about pedestrian safety. Have them look left and right, just like you should be looking left and right. Make eye contact with the driver who may be approaching the intersection so that you can kind of read what's going on now. A child is not going to be able to do it, but having that eye contact is very important. And up until about the age, they get to the age of 10, that's when they really can kind of determine space or distance. And up until then, though, that's very difficult for them to do. So they need your eyes and your judgment to be able to make those decisions or help them make those decisions. Distractions. Again, I so encourage you, put down your devices when you're out and about with your child. If the phone rings, it can always go to your voicemail. You can get that message later on. Do not be distracted. Try to get your child not to be distracted. We want them to be cognizant and pointing out things in the environment, having them see things, pointing out things to them is very important, and it stimulates them about their environment. So it becomes actually a teaching moment and a learning moment for them. And colors and cars and movement, trees, even the sidewalks, the ones that have cracks in them, the ones that are very nicely done, the buses that go by, the trucks that go by. If you are used to wearing headphones, please remove them. Pull them off. I don't even say turn down the volume. I just say pull them down. Do not have them on when you are out in traffic. And make sure that if you're driving that you're taking extra care. Again, school has restarted in most of our areas. I know that some have not really totally started. A lot of virtual or hybrid classes are being done. But again, if you're going through a school zone or you're around or near a school, please be very mindful that children don't always pay attention. And it's left to you as the adult to be very mindful and be paying attention to children who may be on the sidewalk or trying to cross the street. Next, that we're going to talk about choking. This is an area that we really want parents to be very mindful of. There are some foods that can present dangers to our children in the choking area because they don't have the capacity, younger children don't have the capacity for totally chewing their foods. And some foods are just kind of have that consistency or the shape that can present dangers to them, such as hot dogs. If you're going to give your child a hot dog, and I don't have anything against hot dogs, that's not it, make sure that you're cutting it up into bite sizes, not in the little rounds, because this is something that they have a tendency to kind of want to suck on first and then try to swallow whole. Nuts and seeds, chunks of any kind of meats or cheeses, especially hard cheeses, whole grapes, another big problem with little children because they, one, have a tendency to want to, quote, suck on them and then inhale them. Hard or gooey, sticky candy, popcorn, chunks of peanut butter. Raw vegetables such as carrot sticks. If you're going to give your child some carrots or any kind of pineapple, any kind of melon, those sort of things, vegetables or fruits, then you need to make sure that you are cutting it where it is very bite size. And we've already talked about fruits, apples are another big issue sometime with children. Chewing gum. Children don't need to be chewing gum anyway, so please avoid giving them chewing gum. Around the household, just look for those things that might be something that your child would put in their mouth. And we all know that little ones like to put things in their mouth. I'm not really quite sure, but it just seems to be that's the first place that they put things. Balloons, coins, nickels, pennies, dimes that they find on the floor or behind the couch or in the cushions. Any kind of toy that has a small part, anything that can be, any toy that can be totally squeezed into their mouth. Small balls, pens, markers, batteries, especially those kind that are kind of the coin size, and any kind of medicine syringes. And we're going to talk about medications and children's safety around medications a little bit later on as well. And how do you prevent choking? Well, one is most of you, especially new moms, have learned CPR. It's kind of part of the prenatal classes nowadays to have a mom learn how to do CPR, which I think is a very good thing. We've talked about balloons. We've talked about dangerous foods. You do need to cut foods for infants and younger children into bite sizes so that and teach them how to chew their food. Supervise their meal times. If you're giving them something to eat, then you need to stick around while they're eating it. Be aware of older children's actions. Sometimes older children like to share things with their younger ones, not realizing that it could present a danger or put the child at risk. Again, a lot of this has to do with toys and again, or even foods that they might want to share. And they're just really, the younger ones, just not really at that point where they can handle maybe a hard carrot or a whole piece of hot dog. Always follow the directions on any kind of packaging of a toy that you get. If it says it's not suitable for less than 2 years of age, pay attention to that. That toy can be put away and maybe at Christmas time or another time when they're a little bit older. That's when you can pull it out and give it to them. And always check your furniture and under cushions for especially those toys or small coins that might have fallen out. Because you don't want the child to find it. And believe me, they will find anything in a cushion. We have a couple of slides here that you'll be looking at that have to do with CPR. And it is different when you're doing CPR on a child as opposed to doing it on an adult. And so we really tried to do this. Ready? Okay. All right, this slide has to do with CPR. Again, I don't need to read these slides to you, but there is a difference in doing CPR on a child as opposed to doing on an adult. But first, make sure the child is actually in need of CPR. If the child can breathe or cry or talk, then you don't need to start CPR. If they can cough, if they can sputter, or they're moving air, you can see that they are breathing, then this child does not need to have CPR. However, the child is not moving, turning blue, unable to talk, is limp, then yes, you need to start CPR. First, shout for help. Start the rescue efforts, meaning CPR, and while you shouted for help, tell them to call 911. This slide just demonstrates how you position the child and how you start the CPR. Again, I'm going to stress that most of you have had CPR during your prenatal classes. For you parents that have not had any instructions in CPR, I encourage you to contact um, the American Red Cross. They are very good about providing classes, and most of these classes are free. You're not getting certified, so they're not going to charge you anything, but it is a good thing to know. And they'll teach you not only infant CPR, but they will also teach you adult CPR. The next one is about home safety, and I will tell you this, I love this checklist. This is one of my most favorite slides that I do in my orientation with parents. It goes, and the reason why I like it is because it goes room by room, and it will give you hints on things that possibly you hadn't thought about when you went through your house and, quote, started baby proofing. It talks about in your bathroom, water safety. We all know that we should never leave a child unattended in the bathtub. But, making sure that the hot water and the cold water and all of those things that turn on and turn off, that those are secure. Obviously, if you're in attendance with your child, that's not going to happen, that they can grab a hold of things and start turning things on. But have you thought about in the bathroom that that's where you keep medications? So making sure that all of those medications are out of sight and out of reach for a child. When you're looking at your bedroom, stairs, windows, you're looking at your kitchen. In particular, those of us that may have older people living with us that are on medications, I know that in my nursing, back in my career, when I was part of another plan, we did encourage our older folks to put their medication in a place where they would remember to take it. So if it was a morning medication, put it by, the coffee pot. If it was a night medication, put it at the bedside. But if you have a little one in your household, if you have a small child in your household, those are not good places to put medication, because children can reach that medication at your bedside. And believe me, any child that cannot open a child-proof medication bottle, they can open them. We can't open them, but they can always get them open. So make sure that medication is safely stored. We have another slide or a couple of slides coming up having to do with medication and safety in the home. Again, I just want you to look at those very carefully and see if there's any areas of concern that you might have in your home for keeping your child safe. When you're looking at your living room, or maybe everybody's working from home right now, maybe you have a home office that you're kind of working from, or your dining room table, etc. Making sure that wires and connections and all those kind of things are where a child can't get entangled in them. Bookcases, make sure that they are mounted to the wall, that they're secured to the wall. And if you're not able to do that because you live in an apartment and they don't let you drill holes in the wall, then turn that bookcase on its side. The bookcase is still going to be a bookcase. And until the child can not be so adventurous and wanting to climb and try to get up on things, turning it on its side is still going to keep your books where they need to be. And if they happen to climb up on the bookcase, then they're not climbing up 5 little levels and having something tumble on them. Same thing with the chest of drawers. I've had parents who have decided to put them in their closet just to make sure that the child would not be able to pull the drawer out and climb, pull the next drawer out, climb, pull the next drawer out, climb, and then all of a sudden the chest of drawers was tumbling on over the child. Anything that can stop that tilt, make sure that you're doing it. Same thing with stoves. We've had some incidents reported across the United States of children pulling out the bottom, like where you store your pots and pans, or even in a gas stove, it's where all the stuff is to light the stove, pulling that out or pulling down the oven door and wanting to stand on it to climb, and all of a sudden the stove is tilting. And needless to say, stoves are really, really heavy and have caused some serious injuries to children. So, again, if you can't bolt anything to the wall, just make sure that maybe there's a way that that door doesn't open on your stove when you're not in attendance with your child. All right, now we're talking about keeping kids safe around medications. We've already kind of gone over this, but this does give you some ideas about how incidents have been reported with children being poisoned, and hospitalizations, and even some deaths of children getting into medications. And as you can see through the years, that those numbers have climbed. Again, we know that some of this is associated with more people taking more medication. That's one thing. We've got more families and homes that are being combined with older people who have a tendency, yes, to be on medications. And children think that grandma's little high blood pressure pill or her diabetes medicine, that looks like an M&M, so let's just eat that. But you don't want that to happen to your child, so be very mindful. Get that medication, that bottle out of the way. If it can be locked in some type of lock box, that's even better. But at least get it away from a very common area, not the dining room table and not by the coffee pot and not at the bedside. We're going to briefly talk a little bit, kind of switching here a little bit, about mental health. When we're talking about mental health for our children, we want to have our children be able to share their feelings. We want them to be able to understand feelings. We want them to have close and positive relationships. And one way that they can do it is that we talk about it. You may think your child is not really comprehending or understanding everything that you're saying to them, but they know, they pick up your moods. They understand when you're worried or you're sad or you're upset, and they have those same feelings. I know in our centers that we often will go into a classroom, and that's kind of my job. Is I spend a lot of time in the classrooms, and sometimes it's just a tough day. A child just is having a hard day, and the best thing is to get them to talk about it. Maybe they didn't get enough sleep the night before. Maybe there was a little tiff in the car before they got to school, and it upset them. Maybe they heard some harsh words being said. So please keep in mind that your children are about like sponges. They take in everything that's going on around them, and actually getting them to talk about it when they're upset or they're worried or they seem to be sad is a good thing. You want them to be able to express themselves. And we want them to be able to express themselves, and we're asking them questions as well when they're at school. There's another slide right after the first one having to do with mental health, and it just gives you some guidelines on things that you can do or say to help your child kind of learn how to express themselves. There's nothing wrong about talking. We want them to be able to talk it out or show you how they're feeling. Oral health. We do provide during the school year a dental exam through Daughters of Charity. I think it's called now DePaul Community Health with the tooth bus. We have had to delay that for the first 90 days of school. But our plans are that we will be doing this probably after the first of the year. And the kids really enjoy the tooth bus. I'm hopeful that all of you have a family dentist that you're using, and that your child, when they have their first tooth, that you will take them to the dentist. This is always a good idea. With little ones, it's not so much just looking for cavities per se. What we want to do is just make sure that they're having good oral health. That's essentially the first visit or so. Some dentists will tell you they don't need to see the child until they're at least 1 year old. Well, that's great, but if they already have teeth, a couple before that time, then you need to take your child to the dentist. So just keep that in mind. This helps them with their speech. It helps them eat healthy foods. And we want them to grow up with just a mouthful of good teeth, all right? And no pain. Again, I love this little slide because it does tell you some things that you can do to help your child maintain and start very good oral health and maintain good oral health. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about shaken baby syndrome. I know that there is this idea out there that this just involves a child being shaken, usually very violently. However, shaken baby syndrome can be many things. It is any abuse that happens to a child. One, yes, by shaking them very, very violently. But this can be involved with throwing the baby, dropping the baby on purpose, dropping the baby, punching the baby. We have had a number of incidents in and around our city, in the community, of shaken baby syndrome, which in some cases have resulted with a child's death. So my advice to you is that if you feel like you are losing control and you are upset to a point that you want to harm your baby, meaning I'm going to do anything I can do to get them quiet or to get them to shut up, whatever, please reach out to someone. There's no harm in doing that. Call a friend, call a relative, call us, call someone. You can even call the hospital. Believe me, they would much rather hear from you and intervene right then than to have a horrible outcome for you not calling. There is always someone available. Boys Town also has a hotline. You can call Boys Town and talk to someone. There is so much help that no child has to endure being shaken, thrown, punched, hit, scalded, etc. Many times what we know, and I'm saying many times, it is always has a horrible long-term consequence for a very short-term situation. You can look at these slides, and some of these slides are a little bit older, but I can tell you that death and injury statistics have not very much declined. But the only way they do decline is that parents, caregivers start reaching out. We want to make sure that our child is safe at any point in time in their life. We want to make sure that you are going to get on the other side of this. And there's no shame in reaching out. We want you to reach out. Again, call a friend, call a relative, call us, call somebody, reach out to the hospital. You can even call the police and just tell them you need some assistance. Believe me, that again, I'm going to say they would much rather answer that phone call and that need than to show up your house and there is a really horrible consequence that has happened. If you feel like no one is coming right then, my advice is put the baby in a safe place. That's number one, and walk away. Go into the bathroom, run the water, scream, holler, shout, do whatever. If you're at a point where you can just walk away, and I'm not saying walk around the block, leave the child unattended, but maybe if you're in an apartment, you can just walk out to the hall just to get a breath. And then you can kind of pull it together and come back in. But do reach out to someone. There's a lot of help out here that people are willing to help you. All you got to do is make that call. This slide just shows you what happens when the baby is pretty much slammed around. You know, their little brain is just kind of sitting in, I want to say like a glass jar that's got marbles in it, and you just, when you start shaking, you see what happens to the marbles. They just go everywhere. Well, that's kind of what happens with your child's brain. It gets just slammed up against the skull every time they're thrown or punched or hit or shaken, really to excess. And it can start bleeding, and clots can happen, and injuries can happen, and brain damage can happen, and obviously death can happen. This is just one little slide that we thought was really kind of good. The letters in purple stand for peak of crying, unexpected, resist soothing, has a pain-like face, it's long-lasting, and we find that children do tend to cry more in the late afternoon and evening than they do any other time during the day. So just kind of know, okay, there's ways that you can soothe your baby, but again, put your baby in a safe place if you feel like you're losing control, and walk away. Go someplace where you can take a breath. And now we're going to move on to sleep safety. There's not a lot I can say about sleep safety. Your baby needs to be on their back until they're able to flip themselves over. The rule of thumb is the only thing that baby needs in the bed is the crib, the mattress, a fitted sheet, and the baby. That's it. No bumper pads, no mobiles, no blankets, no stuffy toys, none of that. It is mattress, fitted sheet, and baby. If you feel that your child is too warm, then take some clothes off. If you feel like your child is too cold, if you feel like your child is too cold, then put some clothes on. Do not put a blanket in the baby's bed. Do not put a pillow in the baby's bed. And when the baby can flip over, then the baby will flip over. Up until that time, the baby sleeps on his or her back. They do not sleep in the bed with you, ever. Never, ever, ever put your child in the bed with you to sleep at night. That is not the baby's bed. That is your bed. The baby needs their own safe, secure place, and that is in their own crib. You get started with this early, you're never going to have a problem with it later on, of them crawling into your bed or wanting to always be in your bed. So this is really left up to you. You're the parent. Please, please, please make sure your child is sleeping in their own bed. There is a way in which you can position your baby's bed to make sure that your child is safe, not near windows or draperies or blinds or any kind of thing that they could grab a hold of even at that young age, that they could pull into their crib and wrap themselves up with or choke on or put into their mouth or get it to cover their face, because right now they don't, especially young babies and even into the toddlers, they don't have the wherewithal to unwind themselves from something. If your child has a bunk bed, as they get a little bit older, make sure that there are guard rails up on those bunk beds until they're fully capable of not falling out of bed. And that does take a while. And my advice is, don't put your child on the top bunk. If you have a bunk bed in your home, try to make sure that your youngest is always on the bottom and not on the top, even though they might like to get on the top, but just insist that they sleep at the bottom until they get to be a big little boy or a big little girl, a little bit older. So that concludes the orientation for our parents. for all of you having to do with health. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. My last slide has my phone number on it. You can leave me a message if I'm not here in the office, and I will return your call as soon as possible. Thank you again for listening and reading, and welcome to the Boys Town family. We are so happy to have you and your children part of our family now. Bye bye.